Mr. Speaker, we must never forget what happened on the 7th of October 2023. The abduction of men, women and children was a calculated cruelty to break body, mind and soul after inflicting the mindless horror of rape and murder. There is no cause, no grievance that can ever justify what happened that day. I, for one, will never forget.
Keir Starmer, the very weak Prime Minister of Britain, tried to appease the Islamic fundamentalist terrorists by recognizing the state of Palestine around a month ago. A state with no borders, no proper recognized government, still being run by terrorists in Hamas, in the Gaza Strip, no pathway to making peace with Israel, no desire to live peacefully next to Israel, a complete reward for terrorism. And in this case, we see the Conservative MP, Kemi Badenoch, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, taking Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of Britain, to task in the House of Commons in London. Take a look.
Mr. Speaker, and I commend this statement to the House.
Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm grateful to the Prime Minister for advance sight of his statement. I remember almost 2 years ago meeting 3 mothers whose children had been stolen from them on October 7th and held captive in terror tunnels. They were living a nightmare unimaginable for any parent. Many of us on these benches have met hostages, their families, heard their stories, and supported them. Yesterday, it was truly momentous to finally see the return of the 20 living hostages who are now back home in Israel after over 730 days in terrorist captivity. The hostages released yesterday showed superhuman endurance in the face of evil, and we send every best wish to them and their families as they begin the process of rebuilding their lives. Yeah. We also mourn those hostages killed by Hamas and continue to call for all their bodies to be returned to their families. Mr. Speaker, we must never forget what happened on the 7th of October 2023. The abduction of men, women and children was a calculated cruelty to break body, mind and soul after inflicting the mindless horror of rape and murder. There is no cause, no grievance that can ever justify what happened that day. I, for one, will never forget. And the response from some in the West, the equivocation, the indulgence in whataboutery, and the drawing of false equivalence shows how far moral clarity has eroded. And we have got a job to do here at home, Mr. Speaker, to fix this. So on these benches, we stand alongside Israel in our shared fight against Islamist terror. The conflict could have ended a long time ago if the hostages had been returned. So many Palestinian lives have been needlessly lost because of this war. Mr. Speaker, Hamas is a genocidal terrorist organization. A sustainable end to the suffering of civilians in Gaza means the complete eradication of Hamas and the dismantling of its terrorist infrastructure. Even now, we know that Hamas is still killing Palestinians in Gaza. The initial phase of the US-backed peace plan represents a significant breakthrough. I want to thank the US administration, President Trump, and regional mediators for having secured this outcome. They put in the hard yards and found solutions, making clear that all progress would depend on the release of the hostages, a condition that some other governments forgot. Mr. Speaker, with this peace deal, there is much to be hopeful for in the Middle East. If the Abraham Accords are expanded, a new age of peace will have arrived. We will see diplomatic normalization of Israel with the Arab world, something many of us have longed to see. And it saddens me that the Prime Minister's statement does not appear to show that the UK was at the heart of any of these efforts specifically. It is quite clear that UK relations with Israel have been strained by the actions of this government. Their view, and they have stated publicly, is that it looks like under pressure from his own backbenchers, the Prime Minister has taken the wrong decisions, time and time again, diminishing our influence in the region. They can shout shame as much as they want to, Mr. Speaker. Within weeks of Labour coming into power, they decided to restore funding to UNRWA. We haven't forgotten. An organisation, they say yes, that's an organisation whose members assisted in the kidnapping of these hostages, the release which we are celebrating today. Relations with Israel have been so damaged that when Israel launched strikes against Iran, a country that has been a direct threat to us for years, the UK was out of the loop. They may not like it, but it is the truth. And then, in a move praised by Hamas, Labour decided to recognise a state of Palestine with no condition to release the hostages still held in the tunnels of Gaza, rewarding terrorism. They may chunt from a sedentary position. I will remind them of what the former British-Israeli hostage, Emily Damari, said. She called it a moral failure. I'm surprised to hear the Prime Minister say in his statement that it was a contribution to this peace deal. We all know that the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, condemned this recognition, saying it had made ceasefire negotiations harder. That is what the US said. The truth is, as historic events have unfolded in the Middle East, Britain has been out of step with the US. The US ambassador to Israel even called the government's claim that it played a key role in the ceasefire delusional, something Israeli foreign ministers agreed with. Mr. Speaker, I welcome the Prime Minister's promise to scale up protection for Jewish people in our country. Britain has always been a sanctuary for British Jews. But after the tragic murder of 2 British Jews outside a synagogue in Manchester, the government must now do everything it can to eradicate anti-Semitism. The anti-Israel protesters who have turned our streets into theatres of hate have been relatively silent about the good news of a ceasefire and hostage return, showing us their real motivation. The Prime Minister mentioned in his statement the Palestinian Authority. Can he tell us whether the government's preference for the Palestinian Authority to take the reins in Gaza, if they have committed to end the pay-for-slay policies that reward families of terrorists for killing Israelis? Will it deal with anti-Semitism in education, and are they demonstrating any democratic progress? Mr. Speaker, there are also domestic implications. We need to strengthen our borders. Hamas is still running Gaza. Those who would be allowed to leave can only do so with Hamas's approval. We should not be bringing anyone to Britain with links to extremism, anti-Semitism, or to Hamas and other terrorists. So can the Prime Minister confirm whether he intends to bring people from Gaza to study, for healthcare, or for other purposes? And what measures are in place to ensure we are not importing extremism, anti-Semitism, or anyone linked to Hamas and other terrorists? Mr. Speaker, Britain is a great country and still a powerful one. We still have agency to shape the world around us. The government must do better and show it has the backbone to use Britain's power to make a better world.
Can I thank her for the words she said about the hostages just a moment ago, and I know how heartfelt they are. I was surprised and saddened that she spent more time attacking what we actually did to help the process than even mentioning the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, without setting out in terms the number of people that have been killed, that are starving, been subjected to denial of aid, when the immediate task for any serious government is to work with allies to get that aid in at speed. I would have expected at least an acknowledgement of that terrible situation. It shows yet again just how far her party has slid from serious statesperson approach to diplomacy. This is not the time for a fight about what role any individual played. I am proud of what Steve Witkoff said about our National Security Advisor. He was negotiating this He knows absolutely the role we played, and this House should be proud that we played that role. We played that role only because of the relationship that this government has with the Trump administration. We are a trusted partner working both before this peace deal and afterwards. And yes, I did discuss recognition of Palestine with President Trump when he was over here. That's what grown-up, responsible partners do, unlike the discussion here. And I'd stand by my...
No, Keir Starmer. It's not contributing to the situation in Gaza when you unconditionally recognize the state of Palestine without any demand to release the hostages, without any demands made of UNRWA and the role that they play in the conflict, without any demands to end the pay-for-slay procedure, you may call it, or policy, I don't know, in the West Bank. And yes, also the unconditional giving of aid. When you say, we need to help facilitate the aid in Gaza, the starving people in Gaza, they didn't starve. That's a lie. That's not true. But it's been one of the big problems was that from the very first day that this conflict started, all the pressure was on Israel to unconditionally stream in millions of tons of aid into the Gaza Strip without making any demands in return for releasing or even caring for the hostages. This is what happened with the Red Cross, where they constantly berated Israel for not allowing in certain things into Gaza, yet they made no demands to even see the, let alone release, to see the hostages, for Red Cross doctors to see the hostages in the tunnels and to check on their medical condition. So this is weak Prime Minister, two-tier Keir Starmer the wanker, as we see a lot of crowds call him, in the face of terrorists, where it's our responsibility unconditionally to provide all of these things and unconditionally to recognize them as a state. And he's saying, why aren't you talking about the conditions in Gaza? The conditions in Gaza are a result of Hamas's attack and the holding on of the hostages. So when you go around and you say, well, we have to bring in the aid into Gaza, we're helping to facilitate the aid. Fine, I'm not against bringing aid into Gaza, but it needs to be conditional. It needs to be conditional on them releasing the hostages, giving treatment to the hostages. Not to mention the disarmament of Hamas, which is something that's not going to happen. And your recognition of the state of Palestine didn't help at all. Hamas celebrated it. You cannot appease groups like Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood and Islamic fundamentalists. You can't. And that's the biggest mistake here. That Keir thinks he can do it. Yeah, you can kick the can down the road a couple years, but in the long term, you can't appease them. And if you continue to try to appease them, well, you're in for a big surprise in your own borders in Britain, as we saw with the terror attack in Manchester and other actions that are going to happen inside Britain. You can feed the crocodile, hoping he will eat you last, but he's still going to eat you. That's the truth.